Welcome back on our World Focus tonight. The deadly terror attack in Manchester where 22 people died and 59 others were hurt at an Ariana Grande concert last night. It happened around 10:30 local time, around 2:30 a.m. in New Delhi. The latest this hour, ISIS claiming responsibility for the terror attack. Police have arrested a 23-year-old man in South Manchester in the suicide blast. Let's listen into eyewitness reaction.
It was literally just a minute after it ended. Lights came on and bomb went off.
And what could you hear? What did you hear?
Just screams, people are shouting, there's a bomb, it's just balloons, it's a speaker that's popped or something. Everyone was confused, no one knew. But the sound itself was just the loudest noise I've heard.
We entered the venue, a few people that we spoke to, like friends that we'd met before and after the gig, they said their bags weren't checked or anything like that, and usually I'm quite a regular gig goer, so I'm used to getting bags checked for security purposes, but there was no, we just scanned the ticket, went straight in, no security checks whatsoever.
Of the concert towards the doors, and we went to the wrong doors originally, and I said to my sister, these are the wrong doors, we need to go to a different set. So we started walking down to the other set, and that's when we heard an explosion. So I was like, we need to run. So we started running. We ran straight out the doors all the way down to the hotel, and all I could hear was screaming, people crying, everyone was just running everywhere. It was completely madness.
British Prime Minister Theresa May chaired a meeting of the Cobra Committee and will reach Manchester in a few hours. For now, campaigning has stopped for the upcoming June 8th elections.
It is now beyond doubt that the people of Manchester and of this country have fallen victim to a callous terrorist attack. An attack that targeted some of the youngest people in our society. It is the worst attack the city has experienced, and the worst ever to hit the north of England. All acts of terrorism are cowardly attacks on innocent people. But this attack stands out for its appalling, sickening cowardice.
Police say a suicide bomber blew himself up at the entry point at the Manchester Arena Monday night. Most of the victims are feared to be children or teens attending the pop star Ariana Grande's concert. Investigators are treating this as a terror attack. Right now, they do know the attacker's identity, but are not yet revealing it.
We have been treating this as a terrorist incident, and we believe at this stage the attack last night was conducted by one man. The priority is to establish whether he was acting alone or as part of a network. The attacker, I can confirm, died at the arena. We believe the attacker was carrying an improvised explosive device which he detonated, causing this atrocity. We would ask people not to speculate on his details or share names. This is a complex and wide-ranging investigation.
This was a barbaric attack, deliberately targeting some of the most vulnerable in our society, young people, children, out at a pop concert. My thoughts and prayers go out to the families, the victims who've been affected, and I know the whole country will share that view. I'd like to pay tribute to the emergency services who've worked throughout the night professionally and effectively.
Joining me now is Mandy Clark, live from Manchester, as well as Joh Drake, an intelligence expert from London, on the World Focus discussion for tonight. Let me first start with you, Mandy. Mandy, you've been on the ground for a few hours now. What is the mood like there? Something that was starting to be of fun and excitement that quickly turned to fear.
There's a subdued somberness in the city. There is very much a feeling of shock that remains. It was, of course, Manchester's deadliest attack that they've seen so far. So it really has caught a lot of people by surprise. But many of the people I've spoken to say they are hopeful about the reaction of the many, that people had come and offered places to stay, a room for Manchester with Trandine, and also taxi drivers offering free lifts. So although the horror at what has happened, also hope and resilience, how people had reacted in the wake of the terror incident.
All right, let me go to Joh Drake now, standing by in London. John, we've seen many incidences in Europe, Paris, Brussels, London recently, now Manchester. Why is Europe such a haven for terror, and who ultimately takes the blame? Could this have been avoided? Was there a security lapse? A lot of unknowns at this hour. John?
What we have at the moment is Islamic State is trying to create this sovereign territory in the Middle East, and it's losing ground to military operations supported by the international community. Part of the reasons it's conducting attacks in places like Europe is because it has supporters in the region. It's also attempting to undermine public support for military operations in places like Iraq. It's also trying to drive the narrative that backs up its own claims to establishing a sovereign state. It wants to project itself as the legitimate Islamic State for world Muslims, and it wants to project itself as something that's against things such as Western imperialism and what it perceives to be Islamophobic policies by governments around the world. By conducting attacks in places like Europe, it hopes to polarize societies and maybe prompt things like anti-Islamic policies by government and discrimination against the Muslim community by people on the ground. This, in turn, it hopes would prompt Muslims to feel more supportive of Islamic State and maybe encourage more people to join it to fight either in Syria and Iraq or in places in the West. So it's trying to divide communities and present a choice to Muslims that they can either join Islamic State and support it or face cultural assimilation or annihilation in the West.
And John, really quickly, let me also ask you a follow-up question with the political angle. The upcoming June 8th elections are coming up. Of course, Theresa May has stopped campaigning as well as her opponent for the upcoming elections. But what role will this and situations about security and terror play a role in voters' minds?
Well, broadly speaking, the main political parties will share similar ideological approaches to this threat. It's probable that the campaigning will resume again and there'll be a sort of a degree of united front between the different parties. It's not, say, in Spain in 2004 when the Madrid bombings prompted an abrupt end of the ruling party's governance, where it was beaten by a party that opposed military action in Iraq. The parties campaigning for this election are broadly united in their stance on things like counterterrorism.
All right, let me go back to Mandy Clark real quick. Mandy, at this point, what are we expecting to happen in the coming hours, the coming days? We do understand Theresa May will be in Manchester shortly.
Well, there will likely be vigils. There's still many people still searching for their families. So it's still, for many people, an ongoing situation. And the numbers of dead and injured have been fluctuating. So for Manchester, the situation, although the terror incident has happened, the situation is ongoing. So we will continue to see likely pleas for people to find any information about loved ones. There could be loved ones, of course, in hospitals. Those injured went to 6 different hospitals. So for people looking for their loved ones, it's a wide search. And we're going to expect to find out, of course, a bit more of the details of the victims. We know at least one of the victims was an 8-year-old. A really tragic information coming out of here.
All right, Mandy Clark and Joh Drake getting us perspective on this story on our World Focus discussion for WION from the UK. Thank you both for your inputs and your time. That does it for this edition of WION World is One News. I'm Archit Seshadri. Thanks so much for joining us. Good night.